Please be seated. It's my pleasure to invite Denise Sharp, President of the Board of El Hogar, to speak with us this morning. As you may know, we have a long history sponsoring students' education at El Hogar, and our current student is Alondra Ortiz. So we're going to hear a lot more about what El Hogar is doing and some of the new initiatives that they have. Denise, welcome.
All right, thank you very much for having me. I've been involved with El Hogar for maybe 12 or 13 years, but El Hogar is 43 years old, and it is a mission, Episcopal mission of the Diocese of Honduras, and it has a lower school, an upper school, and a farm. There we meet not only the physical needs of the children, but we have the educational needs, the spiritual, and the emotional needs. And I was thinking, because I was going, how am I ever going to tie this to the gospel? But thank you, Lord, it is a good gospel to tie it to. We look at this, we always hear about the Samaritan woman at the well, but I always think of her as the Samaritan woman coming to the well, because Jesus was already sitting at the well. And they were basically two humans in need. The human side of Jesus was thirsting for water, whereas the godly side of Jesus was there sharing water, sharing the water, the Spirit that fills us when we meet all of our spiritual needs. He's letting us know which way to go and how the water will sustain us in a spiritual sense. Well, I think back of this poor woman who's meeting Jesus. She must have been totally confused by this circular conversation. It's noon. It must have been hot. She's hauling a heavy water jug there. And then she gets into this circular conversation on what water is. Is it physical? Is it spiritual? And so she must have felt like she kind of bumped into the biblical equivalent of the New York Times puzzle master. This man is saying he can give her water without a bucket. Plus, he must have been totally suspect. After all, he was Jewish, speaking both to her as a woman and as a Samaritan. And then he must have totally freaked her out by telling her how many husbands she had. If it had been today, she would have wondered about her social media content. But she didn't seem at all fearful. In record time, in just a few of the Bible verses, she understood the deeper meaning of the spiritual water, quenching the thirst so that you're centered in the Spirit and can be all that God has called you to be. This is where I conjectured that all these love relationships of hers must have still left an empty spot in her, and she was looking for deeper spiritual place and connection. So when Jesus declares himself the Messiah, she returns to the city. But she's no shrinking violet or wallflower. She's no second guesser. As soon as she knows what she wants to say, she shares everything. I mean, go girl. I wish I had that kind of action. I probably would have had to go into Episcopal discernment to decide the next step. But now in our times, we also have a need for spiritual water. We all know that we need to not only feed our minds and our bodies, but we also have to come to a centering where we feel as if we're in spiritual connection and we know what we're here to do, what our purpose is in life. In that space, we nurture ourselves sometimes in nature, maybe sometimes wandering through a museum, in the forest, or I see you have a garden outside in the garden. Coming together here, sharing with the community every Sunday morning, knowing that people are here to support you, being with your friends. Well, for me, my spiritual rejuvenation is at El Hogar. El Hogar also made me believe that accidents are good, because the way I came into connection with El Hogar was many years ago, 12, 13 years ago, and it was totally by accident. There was a group going with youth, just like your church group had gone with youth, and at the last minute, one of the adult leaders had to cancel. So my friend who was with the group called me and said, can I join in? And the timing was perfect. I was ready to leave town, get a little space from my present life, and then what clinched it is she said they were going to the farm that is part of El Hogar. Well, I'm a farmer, so that gave me a chance to go and see somebody else and how they farm and what they did, and realize that we have all these common miseries of trying to outfox the weather and guess the crop prices and everything else. And so I signed up. I became quick friends with the farm manager, Yanni, who is still there, and his Spanish and my English didn't match. My Spanish was like really poor, and his English was not much better, so we did a lot of charades, and we passed a lot of motions back and forth, so my charades game is down. And but that's how we communicated. Now, the farm is one arm of the school. It's a working farm, and it has about 260 acres. It has dairy cattle. It produces meat, chickens, eggs, pork, and beef, and some vegetables and fruit, but very little. Because when you hire a farm manager, they do what they know best, and Yanni is ace. If he was here, he'd be in Texas as a cowboy. That's what the farm does. It produces for the schools. And it is, as one board member who saw it last year when we did a board meeting there, drop dead gorgeous. But it is in need of everything you can imagine. The electricity fails, and the milk there would never pass US standards. The way they milk is 1940s. So there's a lot of need to be efficient and produce more. But it's just going into the schools, which is our real mission. And the schools are divided into two. A lower school, which goes from grades 1 through 6, and an upper school that is 7 through 12th. 12th grade is not mandatory in Honduras, but it is mandatory in the sense if the children are going to be able to pass the university test and get into the university. So we go through 12th grade. In the lower school, when you were visiting there, they probably had a lot of boarding students. Now that has switched. That's what's new. There is an initiative to keep children with parents, or at least relatives, grandparents or aunts or uncles, as long as there's not a definitive social service reason for not doing that. Abuse, drug addiction, things like that, sexual assault, alcoholism, abandonment. If there's no other reasons, if it's simply poverty, we try to find a way to keep the children. So all that space you saw filled in the dormitories with children has now only about 30 children. The Social Services Agency in Honduras brings us children that are in that dire circumstance, and we provide a residential program for them. The other children live in the neighborhood Batania, where it's along the Choluteca River near the campus. And if you saw the link to the movie, that's where our children come from. So we have to transport the children with buses, which right now the bus is like 30 years old, and every meeting each week I say, are the wheels still on the bus? Because it's questionable, because it's too dangerous for the children to walk to school. So we have to transport them. This is something we didn't really need to do a lot of before. Before, the buses were simply for field trips. Now the buses are an everyday event, taking them to the lower school. This has also provided a different environment, meaning before, these vulnerable children we had under our care 24/7. So we knew when they were ill, or if something was on their mind, or they were having emotional issues. Now we have them going home to marginal neighborhoods, and we don't really know what happens However, we do have great support from the parents, but the parents are not used to being empowered. If your teacher didn't show up in your classroom, you'd be calling. These teachers sometimes do not show up in the public school system, so the parents have accepted that as normal. So there's a whole parent education and formation of essentially what would be a parent-teacher association in this area. There's a lot of emotional needs for these children too, because of their environment they're living in or with the ones that are brought to us through the social services network. So what have we done with that dormitory space? It looked kind of lonely, lined up beds and just a few children here and there. So we've turned it upside down and said, if these children are not going to be survivors of poverty, they're going to grow out of poverty and be leaders in Honduras, we have to teach these children not only education, but life skills. So they're all turned into apartments where foster moms and dads will be living with 6 to 8 children in each apartment, so that rather than being in an institutional situation where you graduate and have never done your laundry, you can't scramble an egg, you don't know what a normal rhythm of a household is, they now will have foster parents who will say, yeah, you can watch TV, but only after you do your homework. Your teacher called me. I'll pick up your laundry. It's your turn to do the dishes. So that they know how to live in what's a non-institutional situation when they leave. So this goes through the 6th grade. Okay, now at 6th grade, the children move to another campus. Our campus isn't big enough in our neighborhood there to go ahead and expand. So there is another campus in the Ameriteca Valley. It's about 30 to 40 minutes depending on traffic, and sometimes in Tegus it can be an hour, but it's, you know that. Just hit 495 and guess what the time is to get somewhere. So it's in the Ameriteca Valley, and it's the upper school, and in the upper school, the children can board or commute. So if they have no parents, or if they live near the school, they can, if they live near the school, they can commute. If they live at IA, at the lower school, then they can either commute, or if they're in that neighborhood that you saw on the film, they can board. And that's a parent-child decision unless the child is more or less has no options except to board. It's amazing to us how many children in 7th grade want to board. And that is both a good thing and a challenging thing, because 7th graders, well, if anybody's been to a boarding school that has middle school, I mean, it's a little challenging because the children are not necessarily mature enough to be away from home for a lengthy period of time. But because the campus is so nice and they have safety, you know, after school at home, they can't go out on the street and play, or they can't have a table tennis set up. There's either no room or it's unsafe. So they have a lot of options in the upper school campus that they wouldn't otherwise. So that's the challenge. Now, what happens at the upper school? It was originally a vocational program where we had carpentry, welding, and electrical work. We have a registration with the state so that all the children do take electrical classes, so that when they go through, they have their electrical license, so they can go out and work. Now, if you saw the film, you saw the guy climbing the pole who was doing the electrical work and putting the wire nuts on. Definitely wouldn't pass code in Montgomery County. So, and it's different than it is here, meaning I asked, don't they have master electricians and all? Well, they have people that own companies, but the electrical license is the electrical license and allows you to work. So that is one option. The second option is they can go to the university, and we're working on a third option. Since this program started with boys only and has gradually transitioned into girls over the last 20 years, now we're getting enough girls in the upper school that want to do computer science. So we are put in the paperwork so that they teach computer science anyway, but we're putting in the paperwork so that there can be a vibrant computer science program where they get a certification when they graduate. So that's in the works, and that's something new. So right now, after visiting all these years, I found myself on the flip side of this equation, not just visiting, but trying to figure out, you know, meeting with the teachers, meeting with the EDs, and finding out the underlying needs in the school and what's coming along. And we have a new Honduran, well, new in the last few years, ED. She's Denise Vargas. We have a lot of Denises on the board. Our treasurer's Denise. I'm president, I'm Denise. You know, if you're a Denise, just let me know. You're probably on the board. So we have a great ED. She's Honduran, she speaks English fluently, she got a degree from Dartmouth, she has an MBA. She is pulling this organization together to be vibrant with the ultimate goal of being sustainable. So I am super pleased about that. So right now, the programs that we are reenacting or bringing back is what we called our mission programs, and then for a while it was called the immersion programs, and now we call it the Connects program. The Connects is we're trying to bring both adults and youth down to have a more deep connection with the school, but also to learn about the partnerships, other organizations that are working in Central America, the challenges, the impact of climate, the educational levels, just a whole deeper trip. So if you go on the website, you can see all the trips if you want to plan one, but if just one or two people want to join one, I have a list back there of ones that are local, looking for people to come and see and learn more. Now, when Elizabeth and I went down there for a board meeting, I couldn't go just for a board meeting. I had to stop at the Roritan. If you've ever been there, it's a great dive site and a wonderful beach area, and there's lots of options. But if you also want to learn about Copan, that's another great add-on. So if you're an adult coming with one of these groups, please add on. We'll give you plenty of advice where to stay and what to do. So those are the options that we have. And we go out on these trips now and meet other partners. For example, we're partnering with Yo Existo. Some of these children, some of these children come to us with no ID. Can you imagine raising a child with no birth certificate and no social security number? That's what some of these children are. So we partner with this legal organization, essentially, to get IDs for our children. So when they graduate, they are able to get a job and get health insurance and become a Honduran citizen. So that is one of many partnerships that we're with. Most of the people that come to us find it life-changing. There's a quiet hum in the campus, kind of a peace and centering. In the meantime, the soccer ball's banging off the wall constantly, and the children are screaming. When the other way that you can interact is we have partnerships, and there's brochures at the back, and partnerships is much like sponsoring a child, except you sponsor an area. We have academic partners who help strengthen the program so that these children can be licensed, so that they can have the proper computers, so they can pass their university entrance test. We have residential partners that help children interact and go on field trips, and this whole residential life program I've explained with the apartments, which is more expensive than just giving a kid a bed. We also have vocational partners where if you want to help have these children have better electrical training or computer training. That's another option. And we also have health partners. We have a dental clinic. And one of the exciting things about the dental clinic is that we provide services not only to our students, but also to the family. Because many of our children face such strong financial problems that once they hit 9th grade or 10th grade and they can go out and work, the parents are pulling them from school, even though the long term that children would make more money. So we try to provide a little incentives by sending baskets of food home on weekends and giving the whole family dental care and things like that, that will help the parents realize what they already know, that the children will make more money in the long run, but also helps them see some immediate financial benefit from keeping their child in school. Because for them to be a productive citizen, they need at least the high school education to get a job that is going to be viable for them to stay in the country and be a leader in that country. What is amazing to me that I didn't think about until I was there for a while is that many of the children that go on to the university versus taking these other two options are the ones that have nobody, because they don't feel that sense of guilt that you feel when you're in 12th grade graduating and can have a productive income to pay for some of your brothers and sisters' needs. They don't have that guilt. They have no family. So often they're the ones that move on to the university. So the other things beside the partners that we do, we have special needs occasionally, like right now, the bus is a need. Where every day it's a wonder if it's gonna, well, the bus we use is 30 years old for transporting the children, so to see if that bus will keep its wheels on. But there's also donating at holidays or in memory of people. And for those of you with time and energy, reach out to me. We have many opportunities, if you have time and talent, to help us spread the word, do events. Many churches want to send youth groups but don't have the bandwidth to plan it all. They need a little assistance for things like that. And then at the holidays, if you can, rather than another trinket, help send a youth to one of these trips so that it's life-changing. Sometimes, at least with my kid, I feel like I bypassed enabled and went right to entitled, and I needed to backtrack a little bit to get him where he needed to be. But altogether, I know we can do this work, because as a community at the Spiritual Well, we all have a place, and we all have time and energy at some level to assist in whatever ministry you have been chosen and called to. When we come back to our reading at the end, the disciples come back with food, and they say, "Rabbi." He urged him to eat. But he answers with another one of those circular answers. "My food is to do the will of him who sent me to complete his work." So food becomes spiritual work. So for me, El Hogar is my spiritual work, and in any way you would like to learn more or share that, please let me know. And I thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.